Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. This is my dad, Ted.
Welcome to the Smart Thinking Podcast. I'm your host, Ted Knightsky. I am very fortunate that I get to work with parents all over the state of Wisconsin, the Midwest, well, heck, even the United States. Many times I am brought in by schools and systems to help work with parents to walk through the questions that they have and the wonderings they have about parenting. Each time I get together with these parents, I absolutely love it. I've done several episodes on this, and last week I was working with some parents, and it was the most curious group of parents I ever worked with. Not curious because I thought something was up with them, curious because they had lots of questions. In the time I had allotted to work with them, I unfortunately ran out of time, but I walked out with all of the questions that they had. It was very fascinating to me that some themes ran through this parent group about how to support their children, how to ensure that they're safe, and most importantly, how to engage them and make sure that they grow into successful young people. And one of the things that we talk about in these parenting sessions is like, what does success look like for a young person? And we take that baseline and we go from there. Now, before I get into all this, we have to do our weekly reminders around a few things. First is that we are all leaders, meaning that each and every single one of us, every single day, have the opportunity to demonstrate our influence. Because a leader is anyone who has influence over another person, which means that people are constantly watching us, they are learning from us, they are growing from us, and most importantly, they are leading themselves through the examples that we set for them. While leading, we are also doing something else, following. There's leadership and followership. And followership focuses on the care principle, collaborating with others, holding yourselves accountable, being resilient, and then being engaged in the work that you are doing, ensuring that you, yes, you and I, each day are making the choices that we need to make in order to support other people as well as ourselves successfully. We do all this with a key behavior of Buffalo leadership because we are optimists who charge into the storms we are facing with great energy, resilience, tenacity, and reflection. And finally, we are always empathetic, wondering what would it be like to be the other people in front of me, around me, and what would I need if I were them. Those keys to leadership in life are applicable no matter where we go, and they are most applicable when we are parents. Before we get into the strategies here and the applications for us as parents, I just want to tell you a really quick story, and it's the story of me as a young teacher. Now, years ago, I had told something similar to this on the podcast, but I wanted to send you a reminder because I think one of the key pieces for each of us as parents is to maintain our curiosity. Parenting is the most difficult job on the planet, and it doesn't get easier as our children age. As a matter of fact, it gets more complicated as our kids get older, even when they leave the house. And what I want to share with you is the journey that I had as a young father and where I really grew into being curious about parenting. You see, as a kid, I grew up in a very interesting household. I'm the oldest of three brothers, Teddy, Tommy, and Johnny Knightsky. And we had some, I would say, disruptions over the course of our formation as young people. And when I became a teacher, I became very curious as to how the kids in my class could be the way they were. And there was these certain kids that I would see that I was just really impressed with, and they had strong characteristics. And before my wife and I were able to have our children, I wondered a lot, like, what are these houses like? What do they do in these homes? And how do they act this way? And one of the things I kept seeing in these young people that really impressed me was some very specific behaviors. And I actually sat down while I was in grad school and started to study what is it that makes a kid great? So I actually defined it for myself before we had children because I wanted to take this definition and then reverse engineer it to determine how are these things happening for these young people. So like anyone interested in research, I had to create a baseline. What is my definition? And then figure out how do they get to be this way? So I defined a great kid as having these qualities. Number one, they were confident in themselves, not cocky. I mean, they really truly understood who they were. They knew their skills, they knew their strengths, and they had confidence. They would walk into any given situation with the ability to kind of be whoever it is they were. They did not try to be like other people. They did not imitate other people. They did not try to impress other people. They just had this subtle, humble confidence about themselves. They could be in any social group. I watch these young men, women go into different social groups. They could hang out with the kids who were like into gaming. They could go into kids who were interested in motorsports, girls and boys interested in horses and athletics and reading. It didn't matter. They could hang out with kids who came from broken homes or kids who came from amazing homes. It didn't matter. They could swim in all social groups. The next thing that I really noticed was that when they liked something or they cared about it, boy, could they put in some effort. And did they work hard at it? Now, the key word for me here in the definition was they worked hard in the things that they cared about. They weren't worried about impressing their parents. They weren't doing their grades and going to class to make money because there was some external incentive to do that. They did it because they wanted to. They did things that they cared about and they did them well. One of my favorite qualities was that they were comfortable around adults. Now, many of you know young people like this who could just simply walk up to you at any moment and just strike up a conversation. They knew how to navigate. They knew how to investigate, and they knew how to instigate conversations. I loved being around them, and they loved being around us, and they were comfortable around adults. They were resilient socially and emotionally. No matter what happened to them, they figured out a way to move themselves forward. They were never down in the dumps for significant periods of time. And if they were, they tended to pivot and shift. They weren't fake, meaning they didn't pretend to be happy all of a sudden just to make sure others didn't bother them. They could actually figure out their way and navigate their way through their days. But this resiliency of them socially and emotionally was something that really impressed me because, frankly, I still struggle with that. They had no sense of entitlement. They didn't act snobby. It didn't matter if they lived on a farm, in an apartment, or in a house on the lake. They had no sense of entitlement. And they had this kind of bees or better mindset. They did their best for others. In other words, be there for others, be their best, and bees are better at school. And they just were always there. And that was my baseline definition of a great kid. So then I started to do something. I started to invite myself over to dinner at some of these families' homes and just watch what went on at their houses. And I saw these amazing things taking place. And then when I went back into my list of confidence and being comfortable in all social groups, doing their best, being comfortable around adults, being resilient, I started to see why. Because their families modeled it. And it didn't matter if they had a mom and a dad, if they had mixed families, if they had split families, if they were being raised by grandparents. It didn't matter. These things were constant, and what was constant was how they dealt with things at home, how they dealt with conflict, how they talked to each other, what was modeled. And my favorite thing, they always had dinner together, and lots of people at the dinner table, not just their own family, but other family members and friends, meaning they were creating the social construct at the dinner table, which allowed them to grow confident, swim in any social group, do things that they cared about, be comfortable around adults, and be resilient. Because when you sit at a very diverse dinner table, do you know what that means? It means you're going to get picked on. It means others are going to get picked on. It means people are going to argue. It means that everything is not going to go as planned. And a dinner table is just like life. So as I sat and watched these dinner tables, I began to collect all types of strategies. And one of my favorite strategies was that dinner table. The fact that they had that as the center of the known universe and that all problems were played out there, laid out there, and negotiated there. Putting these children in a position to every single day see and learn and be modeled what they needed in order for them to find success. Because, as my friend Craig Weber says, the dinner table is the single greatest in-service of a person's life. So as I continued to explore these dinner tables and families over the course of my education career, I moved from teacher to administrator, and I continued that curiosity, always capturing all of the different tips and tricks that I saw. Many times they worked, and sometimes they didn't. But what happened in these homes were certain things that you need to think about. The first was traditions. They ate together with frequency. And in a moment, I'm going to take on these questions that the parents had left me in that last parenting session, and we're going to see where these gaps exist in a modern family. And when I say a modern family, I'm not talking about that amazing show. I'm talking about in 2026, where are our gaps and how do we fill them? Kids had predictability and routines. Parents were transparent with their kids. There were no secrets. Family first was the center of everything. Everything was done for and by the family, because one of the themes here for these moms and dads and parents and guardians was they all recognized one thing about their children. They're temporary. It's an 18-year journey, and if you do your job well, you end up sad at the end because they grow independent, they want to go out there and do things, and they leave the house. They're not squatters. They're not going to stay there forever. What they're going to do is they're going to work hard to make sure that they find their own way and their own happiness. And it's at that dinner table, in your home, and how you model expectations that allows them to grow forward and do those pieces. And the expectations that these families had that created these confident, great kids that I saw, well, they were very high. They were high for themselves and for each other, and the family held each other accountable. So let's take a look at that. So great homes have predictable languages, and they do things each night. And I know I've talked about this before, but I want to lay it out there again. At the end of every dinner, the beginning of every dinner, at the beginning of any interaction, kids get in the car, get dropped off, going, there was always curiosity from the parents. No parent that I was with ever asked an open-ended question like, did you have a good day? Because that's a yes-no answer. And kids know one thing. They know how to answer to get you to leave them alone, because they've been manipulating us our entire lives. That was something I learned at those dinner tables. If you want to be in a position to get answers and understanding of what your children are going through, dealing with, and striving for, well, it has to happen through the conversations that you facilitate as the adult. Because kids don't come around asking higher order questions, only adults do. So, number one, never ask this question. What did you do at school today? Again, simple answer. Instead, ask questions like I learned at one of my favorite houses. All right, everybody has to share something they learned and how it can help us all. And then this family would go person by person by person, and each person would share something interesting that they learned that day. And because they had been doing it forever, nobody was embarrassed. Nobody thought this was dumb. Everybody at the table shared something they learned, and it was slightly competitive. Like, oh yeah, you learned how to measure the volume in a cone today? Well, guess what I did? I learned how to measure the velocity of a moving object as it's falling from the sky. In the meantime, a little brother or sister is sitting there listening to all of this and absorbing all of the information, and the whole family is growing together. But it started with a question, because you could have simply asked those same kids, what'd you learn today? Or you could ask them, teach us something that you learned and how it would benefit all of us. That's powerful question asking. That's the curiosity that parents need to run their homes with, and that's what helps build confident kids. The second thing is whatever else you value, and asking questions about that. So at the Knightsky family home, as our children grew up, there were 3 questions we always asked. Shared one thing you learned today, share one way you helped someone, and share something funny that happened. Now, the reason I share those with you is because those 3 things are our family's core values. So if you're a classroom teacher, you run a business, you run a system, whatever you do, what are your core values? How are you measuring them? And how are you assessing them? Because we wanted our kids to be good learners, we wanted them to be servant people, and we wanted them to enjoy life. So we measured them. My favorite question is the last one about share something funny that happened. Because many times what we would see is that our kids would say something that was funny to them but not appropriate. So it allowed us as a mom and a dad the teachable moment to step in there after they shared their story and say things like, well, you might think it's funny that that student threw an egg at the teacher, but what would you feel like if that was your mom, a teacher, and she came home and said a kid hit them with an egg? Immediate silence at the dinner table. The opportunity to model empathy, and most importantly, to reframe what is and what isn't funny. Many times they would leave the dinner table after that reframe, and my wife and I would look at each other and just start to laugh like, well, actually, that's pretty funny. Okay, so there's a bunch of things that we could talk about with young people, but here's what I want to do. I want to ask you to reflect upon the questions that these parents left me with as I give different tactics and ideas on how to address these questions that they had asked me. So when I run the parenting sessions, we give out a little pad and it says 3 prompts. A question I've always had about being a parent, a question I have about children, and a worry I have for my children's future. And each parent is allowed to write in whatever they want. It's anonymous. I grab the cards and then I use those cards as I'm walking through. It's a great strategy for you to use. And frankly, whatever you're doing in life, steal the strategy, give these open prompts, and use them to frame anything that you're working on. Okay, so here are some of the questions that I was asked, as well as the answers provided, but most importantly, some reflections for you as you are parenting or supporting those who are parenting. This question is this. One question I've always had about being a parent is, how do I influence my kids to be better than me and want more than me? Ooh, I like this one. And I like this one for several reasons. Because I think all parents are working hard every single day to try to provide for their kids things that they may or may not have had. And most importantly, hoping that they will excel farther than we have ever taken ourselves. And what I like about this question is the genuine curiosity of how do I influence my kids to be better than me? Well, I jumped on this question in front of the parents, and better than me is something that I don't know how to define, but you know what I do know how to define? Making sure that kids understand all of the things that are provided for them. I think one of the things that many parents deal with is the guilt of like, well, I don't really want to say that this was expensive and I don't want them to feel bad and I don't want them. Well, God darn it, you do need to make them understand all of the things that they have around them and that there should be a general appreciation for it. Because in the absence of that general appreciation, what will happen is if we don't address it, because an unspoken expectation can never be met, if we don't address it, what ends up happening is we grow children who have a sense of entitlement. They're living on social media. They're seeing all the things they're supposed to have. They're seeing the way the world is supposed to be, and they're constantly making comparisons against what they have and what they do. Well, how do you break that cycle? How do you help kids understand that all I want for you is to have more than me and be better than me? Well, first of all you do is you stop and reflect every time you get to do something. That's right, an oldie but a goodie. What do we get to do? If you have the opportunity to go out for a nice dinner, and if you have the opportunity to go on a trip, or if you have the opportunity to do something that's outside of the norm, you need to point it out. You need to stop and celebrate. You need to reflect upon it. You need to live your life with a sense of wonderment, where every time something cool does happen, you just stop and say like, kids, come here a second. Look at this. I can't believe we get to do this. We are so blessed. We are so fortunate. Look at what we have. A daily reflection of all the different ways in which we get to grow and go together. All of the different things that we have around us that we are so blessed to have. And what I mean by this is just the frequent stopping and starting the conversation of, wow, look what we get to do tonight. I can't believe this. Look where we are today. And not the traditional, when I was your age, my parents would have never let me do this and blah, blah, blah. Nope. In the moment, reinforcing how grateful you are for them, for what you get to do, and for what you have. And constantly and positively pointing that out. If you want your children to strive for things and understand the world in which they have and the gifts that they do have, we need to lead curiously with our own kids and say, like, can you believe we get to do this? Because, again, I want you to be empathetic for a young person right now who likely is on Snapchat, Instagram, watching TikTok reels, and comparing their lives to what they see on there. And no one can ever get everything that they see online. It's ridiculous what these young people can build in their heads. So instead, stop in the moment, make sure that we're celebrating it, and moving forward. Another question I had, which I never personally experienced, but I have supported and watched over and over and over in my career. The question is this: how do we navigate co-parenting transition when my children favor one home over another? Well, I learned early on as a middle school principal, as we were helping many parents who were struggling in this transition when it was first new, or struggling as it had been established, and watching children manipulate both sides. And the key thing for everyone to recognize is this idea of manipulation. Now, manipulation sounds really nasty and mean, but it's not. It's a learned behavior. What we all are doing all the time, every single day, is manipulating the environments around us to make them what we need and what we want. So what we need to do is we need to be aware that people around us are constantly manipulating. And whatever we model, whatever we ignore, and whatever we expect is what we get more of. Remember, a behavior ignored is a behavior reinforced. And this favorite quote of mine from Greg Harden is control the controllables. When you are co-parenting, if there's not a good relationship, you can only control what goes on in your own boundaries. And you can also make sure to be on guard for the opportunities we provide our own children to manipulate us, and become aware of them, call them out, not tolerate them, and make sure to establish the clear boundaries and expectations when you are in my presence. Here's something that I think all of us parents have learned over time. When we're stressed out, when we're worried, and when things get a little too warm in temperature with our relationship with our children, especially as they start getting older, we are short-sighted. We are not keeping our eye on the long goal that we have for our children, for them to be confident, successful, to be who we want them to be on the day they decide what that is. Instead, what happens is when we're in a position where we might be pitted up against something else, we will cave in the moment on the things that we value in order to satisfy the person in front of us who is trying to manipulate us. It's a weird thing, and it only takes time for you to begin to recognize that, oh my gosh, that was a decision I should not have made. I'll give you a quick example. All of my friends, you have an 8th grader, all of my friends are sleeping over at that house. And you're like, listen, I told you there's no sleeping over, there's no dating until X age, but you're the only parent and nobody ever, and how come? And then you even do your diligence and call the other parents and like, oh, we think it's going to be safe. It's not that big of a deal. The parents are going to be home. There's a bunch of people there. And you are just under the stress and strain of the moment, and you give up on something that you valued. And now your child has seen the pathway to getting more of what they want, which is hardcore pressure. Now you mix in 2 households where, well, when I get to go over with dad lets me do this. And then you start to, again, negotiate on your values. Control what you can control. Understand you're being manipulated, and play the long game. Do not give in the moment to win a temporary victory, because those temporary victories for them are lifetime recipes for manipulating you. Okay, here's another question. What is the most effective daily practice to best support my child? Are you ready? Positive reinforcement. Go back a couple of episodes and listen to that whole episode, because the single greatest thing you can do for your children throughout the course of their development is to make sure that you are reinforcing what is best for them, what you expect for them, and all the different ways in which they are making a difference. Again, go back to those 3 questions. Tell me something you learned today. We're going to reinforce learning. Wow, look at you. That's a really great thing. Tell me more about that. Hey, how did you help somebody at school today? Well, there's a kid in my class who struggles with blah, 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 blah. So I walk them through and I help. That is fantastic. That's the type of character we want in this family. What's something that happened? Reinforce, reinforce, reinforce. And again, just remember that regardless of age, what you expect and what you reinforce is what you will get more of. And what you ignore will only be amplified. So we want to positively reinforce everything that we can to support our children. That is number 1. Remember, the core job of a parent is 3 things. Protect them, love them, and hold them accountable. Those 3 things in equal combination daily will create a young person who is resilient and tenacious and a little buffalo, because they will know that their mom and dad or their parents are always there for them. They will know that they are loved, and they know that they will be held accountable. So one of the questions that was asked of me is, how do I best protect my child? Well, best protect your child is to do this. Make sure that as they age, you are walking through the scenarios of life that they will face. Make sure that you are having the conversations that they need to have. Make sure you are not avoiding difficult things that they will need. And let me give you some examples. Scenarios. Every child in the United States will eventually face a social scenario that will be uncomfortable, whether that be smoking, whether that be drinking, whether that be sexual, whether that be making poor choices, no matter what it is. And as a parent, as your children go through the different transitionary years and ages of their life, you need to positively anticipate what they're about to go through and sit down with them and walk them through the scenario. For instance, one of my favorite scenarios is this. Okay, you're 15 years old now. You're going to go over to other people's houses. We are going to trust you. However, sometimes you're going to get into some environments where you're going to feel uncomfortable and you're not going to know what to do. So here is what we expect. Number 1, if you get in a situation and somebody puts some social pressure on you to do something you don't want to do, all you have to do is text us that you want to ask us a question. You have a code word with your children. Ours was Uncle Kirk. Uncle Kirk was the code word that if we got texted, we knew our kids needed us. That immediately triggered a response from us of, yes, Uncle Kirk stopped over. Where are you? We will come and get you. Kids need reasons to get out of really sticky situations, and parents are the best thing to blame. And if they're about to be put into a situation that they don't know how to get out of, they've got to be able to get out of it with some social construct and strategy. So, hey, the Uncle Kirk strategy. Then what we did with our kids was we said, all right, when we come pick you up, if you had made a poor choice, i.e. smoking or drinking or anything that might have gotten you in trouble, the very first thing we're going to do is rip through the 3 things that are my responsibility. Number 1, I'm going to protect you. Number 2, I'm going to love you. And number 3, in this order, I'm going to hold you accountable. So, protect you. Are you okay? Did you ingest anything? What did you take? How much of it did you take? What did you drink? What did you swallow? What did you? And not in an angry way or a way to make them feel ashamed or guilty. A curious, loving, caring way. Because job number 2 is to love them. Make sure that I've protected them, and now I'm going to care for them. So once we did that, then we would have the conversation of what the consequences were. But we would tell them all of this up front. It's called the meteorologist strategy. You forecast for them, hey, if you make a bad decision, this is what we're going to do for you, and then eventually to you. Because if they know what the consequences are, and they know they're not that big, and they know their mom and dad love them and are going to protect them, they're very likely going to call. Now, you have to come to the parenting sessions to hear the stories about my children and how we use that, but it worked every single time. Every single time, because we shared with our kids exactly, here's what the expectations are. If you get in trouble, this is what will happen. And we walked through the scenarios, and we also forecasted for them the consequences, which, as long as you're alive and safe and I can love you again, they will not be as bad as you ever dreamed up in your own brain. The next thing is this, the conversations. So how do I make sure that my kid grows confident and strong as they move forward was another question. Well, you make sure you have conversations. And this will make you uncomfortable when I say it out loud, but we have to talk to them about everything. Menstruation, masturbation, changes in life, sexual reproduction, everything. That is the job of a parent. It is our job to have those conversations. In the absence of us having them, they're going to learn on the back of the bus. They're going to learn from friends or social media, and we have to have those conversations. I talked last year about sextortion and all the different ways that young men are being manipulated as a result of their exposure to online pornography early in life. Well, that would not happen to a lot of these kids if their mom and dad talk to them about it. There are different ways that people are being extorted through media and the internet and social media and all the different apps that are out there. And if our kids don't know about it and they don't know what to do and they don't know what you're going to do for them, well, then they're going to make bad choices and they're never going to come to us. So that's how we teach them how to deal with it, by talking to them. Okay, I'm running out of time here, and I've got a lot more questions, but I wanted to give you the ideas to get you really, really thinking about how do I create the conditions so that I've got confident kids, that I've got a strong child, that I have a resilient child. And finally, how do I as a parent know I'm doing a good job? And that's the last one I'm going to end with here. How do you know that you're doing a good job as a parent? You never do. That's the answer. And the faster you can accept that there is no rubric or perfect way of which to parent, the better off you'll be. How will you know if you feel like you're doing a good job? Well, if you feel like you're doing a good job, these are the conditions you're creating. You're creating the conditions that your children take risks. And I mean, they go out there and they put themselves out there. They do big things and they're not worried. If you're doing a good job as a parent, you're limiting their access to technology. You're spending time with them. You are putting in place boundaries. The same parent on their second question asks, what do I do with all the things that they have to do? Going to different clubs, playing in sports, being active, and all of these different components that they have in their lives as young people. Well, it's your job as a parent to limit that. Our kids were not allowed to do anything on Sunday nights. Period. They couldn't work. They couldn't participate in sports. If there was a tournament going on, we were home for Sunday dinner. They had to be home for Sunday dinner. What's the payoff for that? Well, short term, there were some nights that they were frustrated and they were mad. My friends are doing this. How come I can't? But long term, when you have dinner 52 Sundays a year as a family for the course of your entire life, You do not remember the 2 Sundays that you were not allowed to go ride your bikes with your friends who are out screwing around. You remember the 52 Sundays that you were at that dinner table, feeling loved and protected. Parents, it's the short-term choices that we are making that compound into long-term consequences that we need to be conscious of. And it's the same thing no matter who we are, who we're managing, or who we are around. Our choices compound into macro outcomes, consequences, and successes. And let's focus on the success. So let's do some smart thinking. What's a question you've always had about being a parent? What's a question you have about children? And what is something you worry about for the future of children? That's it. That's the Smart Thinking Podcast. Hey, as always, thank you so much for listening, and make sure to share this with others. And I appreciate that you support the Smart Thinking Podcast each week. Today's episode was really just an opportunity to get you thinking about all the different fun journeys that we have as moms and dads and guardians of the young people in our lives. Also, thank you to the Well Pennies for their great music and the opportunity each week to play the catalog from the Golden Bear Studios in Des Moines, Iowa. Okay, as we close out here, I wanted to address one more question. And this question, I feel every teacher, anyone who's trained in working with children or understands child psychology, will have a very quick answer. And the question is, should we allow kids to negotiate with us? And my answer is maybe. And the reason my answer is maybe is because there is a proactive strategy that we parents should be using in order to not have to negotiate with them, but instead negotiate for them. Are you ready? And what that means is that all young people are really, really looking for 2 things. Basic brain science. They're looking for structure and status. What are the rules and where do I stand with my mom and dad and my guardians? And what you need to do as a parent is do everything you can to increase choice and voice for the young people. You see, when they're little, it's exciting to just strap into the car and go on an adventure and not know what they're doing and end up someplace. But as you age, one of the things that you want to do is you want to have a little thing called control. And that's where we get lots of pinch points as parents, because we want to have a little thing called control. So what happens is when the 2 of us, a mom and a dad and their children, are in a situation where the parents are on one side and the kids are on another, there's going to be conflict if there is no choice and voice. So what we want to do is, as our children age, is increase the opportunities for them to pick what we are doing. However, you don't just randomly throw out there, hey, what do you want to do? You're the parents. You are in charge. You are in charge of protecting them, loving them, and, most importantly, holding them accountable. And if you ever find yourself in a position as a parent where you feel like you are employed by your child, well, guess what? That's on you. And it's because you probably have not been giving them enough choice and voice over the course of their development. So what does it sound like? Okay, friends, we're going out for cheeseburgers tonight. Do you want to go to McDonald's or do you want to go to Culver's? Not, do you want cheeseburgers? Where do you want to go? Well, do we have? Yes, one of those 2 places. Then we're going to Culver's. Awesome. Okay, we are going to stay up tonight and watch one of 2 movies. Which of these 2 movies do you want to watch? I don't want to watch either of them. Well, then we'll choose. Well, now wait, I don't want to watch the one that you want to watch. Well, great. That's why you have 2 choices. Do you want to watch Nemo or Cars? Flashback to a dad of a 23-year-old. Do you hear what I'm saying? Choice and voice increase creates a little thing for the kids called autonomy, where they feel that they're in control. Do you guys want to go here or there? Do you want to stay till 9 or 10? Not do you want to go? Are we going to go? But we are going, and you have choice in this. Do you want to be there till 9 or 10? If you increase choice and voice with those that you serve and love and are around you, well, they have a little thing called autonomy again, and that allows them to be able to feel a sense of control. It's in the absence of control that we have conflict, and that conflict is what most parents deal with because they say things like, it's this or nothing. And when you say it's this or nothing, well, then you get a kid who's like, then nothing. And then you get frustrated and you make them do something anyways while they are masterfully manipulating you like a bow on a violin. I'm going to save these questions, and as I get more questions, what I'm going to do is each month or every couple of weeks, I'm going to do a parenting session and just continue to answer all of these different worries and wonders of moms and dads so that we can help each other and really start reflecting and doing some smart thinking on how to be better parents for the children that we love and serve. Because remember, our job is not to work for them. It's to work with them. Our job is to protect them, love them, and hold them accountable. And why is that? Well, because we want resilient kids who grow up in the future with the confidence that they need in order to decide what it is they want to be. So when they graduate from high school and enter the workforce or go off to university or college or the military, that they are confident enough to go forward and not need us. And the hardest part about being a parent is that if you do your job, you're not needed. However, they will always come back for three things. They will come back for protection to make sure they're doing the right things in their lives. They will always want and desire to be loved, and they will always want to be held accountable to the standards that they are setting for themselves. And that's the beauty of being parents, is that we get to do that every single week. And when we do that, we're creating buffaloes who will always do one thing: charge into the storms that they're facing with confidence, tenacity, and perseverance.
You start my heart when you walk out your car. We talked there for hours. I heard you laugh, gave me a heart attack, yeah. Like some superpower. If you're my hero, I need saving. Your smile is what I'm craving. What a beautiful miracle it is. Figure it out. I needed someone to help lift me off the ground. Heroes exist. Baby, a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why didn't I see it before? You take me back to when we were singing songs under the stars. Not a worry in our minds, flowing in and out of time. At the speed of light, you ran straight into my life. You can control every thought in my mind. Figuring out I needed someone to help lift me off the ground, yeah. Heroes exist, baby, a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why didn't I see it before? Wanna get a bit closer to you. Wanna feel your power, yeah. I figured out you were that someone to help lift me off the ground, yeah. Heroes exist, baby, a gift of light brings me close to the light. Why